In this video, we'll be taking a look at why this chart is the most important for you to be looking at in the markets right now. We'll also be taking a look at our technical analysis levels for the SP 500, Nasdaq, Tesla, Bitcoin, gold, silver, dollar index, and more. In the last couple of days, it's all been about commodities, but now we're seeing a big fall off in cryptocurrencies and of course the stock market. What's to come? Stay tuned. All right, guys, well, let's take a look at the heat map for yesterday to try to get a bit of an idea of what was going on. And it's very clear straight away that only some of the defensive sectors were safe. Healthcare was kind of a bit of a mismatch. And then we had some consumer defensives such as Walmart with a decent earnings come out and do okay. Basically speaking though, nothing was really that great yesterday, and it comes clear when we take a look at the indices. They started okay. In our live session, we were warning around that peak level, especially the Nasdaq, of course, 13,400 being the resistance zone. We kind of met that, and then by the end of the day, we saw sell off into the close, which really means Wall Street was the one selling near the close, and of course, they were trapping the retail buyers. When we take a look at the sectors, you'll notice that all the value sectors, things like XLE, XLF, industrial, some of the stronger sectors over the last couple of months were down, and the defensive sectors such as healthcare, utilities, and consumer staples were almost as flat as they could get. And this is consistent with a generalized sell-off with Wall Street. You also notice that things like healthcare, things like real estate, things like utilities actually did the best for the day. It kind of gave you that precursor that Wall Street was rotating into these stocks. But without further ado, let's get into these technical analysis levels, because I know a lot of people are very keen for today's video, and fair enough. There's some great levels here that we'll be talking about. Now, first one, dollar index. Dollar index hit this low over here. This level was 89.70, and it hit it, and it's bouncing off right now. Could we see sustained dollar strength here? Well, it closed the daily underneath, so maybe it comes back up, tests the 90 from the bottom up, and it may find some resistance selling here, which could be good for gold and silver traders. We'll continue to watch this one, but it is quite far away from the daily 20 now, which is of course the area it likes to pull back to when it does pull back. Remember, it's that 2 steps down, 1 step back philosophy. And if you actually take the distances of these, I'm pretty sure they're going to be very, very similar. Very similar pullback. So even if that happened again, imagine how far back the dollar could go. At this stage, it's still weak. We could think around 90 being resistance, and there's nothing else to look at on this chart for now. Let's go over to gold. So gold hit our price target zone. That was 1874. Hit it nicely, and now it's consolidating around this area. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see gold actually weaken a little bit here, and then maybe even test from the top down this 18 kind of 50 zone, where it's going to hit a 200 simple moving average, the green line here. I think that makes sense. And of course, if gold ever breaches this 1875 zone, then we're going to go towards 1900. And of course, the eventual aim is 1960 for gold. You can see the resistances throughout time and how powerful that level is. And you can also see this 1920 is okay. But I think 1960 and 1900 will be the next zones for gold if it can break higher. Over to silver, the squeeze is currently not underway. Of course, 28 was breached. We talked about a weekly 28.50 being a very important level, and we need now a closure above this area here. Now, imagine if we get a closure above this area here. So this area is the 28.70. If we get a closure above that, not only are we going to 30, but I think we're going to start putting huge pressure on the 30 zone. This is, of course, a very nasty looking candle. It looks like a rejection candle. Some people know it as a pin bar or a shooting star. This candle usually signifies further weakness in this market. Possibly we see weakness in silver now back to 27, kind of 70, somewhere around there. It buys off, finds some support. Let's take a look at the 4 hour here. 4 hour 20. Oh, it's pretty close. So somewhere in this zone, you would expect some buying here for silver. And then of course, if it never gets above there, $30 comes underway, and we've talked about a break of 30, what that's going to do for silver for some time. It's amazing how big that event is going to be. Now, a lot of you are probably here for the crypto discussion. Of course, Bitcoin, incredibly weak right now. Elon kind of started this, but I always thought that we were going to have a bit of weakness in Bitcoin. We were going to have that strength in Ethereum, and then it would turn around. You know, the problem with this though, is it kind of looks like Wall Street's involved in the cryptocurrency space. And also that whole thing with the Shibu and the Doji is still in the back of my mind. You know, that shows peak euphoria generally when you see things that nobody cares. No one can do any wrong. No one really has any kind of value in any of these things. And they just go up and they make people billionaires potentially. That always has me worried. But Bitcoin did break underneath here, the 42,000 this morning during the Asian session. Is this significant? I think so, but at this stage, it's not really changing any of our thought processes. We still have that 40,000 with the 200 simple moving average, and we still have that weekly huge support level of 38,000 that's sitting down here. Now, if we put this in perspective of the run, let's call the run from the bottom down here. Let's actually put a fib all the way from March last year. We put this in perspective. Basically, we've just hit the 38.2 fib pullback. Have we hit a 50 fib pullback now? No, that's around 35,000. But I think for me, kind of 38,000 is starting to get very, very scary in the markets. We're not there just yet, but I would actually like to see this bounce pretty damn soon. It's hitting, of course, around this 40,000 psychological, very, very close to. And if it doesn't bounce here, you know, the problem you're going to have is that where exactly is it going to bounce? And also, are we still holding bullish sentiment? Remember, in market pullbacks, Bitcoin is more about how much percentage can it come off. Peak to trough right now, we're looking at 37%. Not unheard of. But you know what hasn't happened ever during a bull run on Bitcoin? At least not to my knowledge for a long time. It's never gone down over 50% and then reclaimed it back. So 37% starting to get a little bit scary. I'm going to continue to monitor the situation. And of course, what we're looking for here is a trough, a peak, a higher trough, and a higher peak. Where will, at this stage, Bitcoin resume its uptrend? Needs to break through 46,000, and it has not done so yet. And of course, it's quite far away. You can see here the support over here, the resistances. 46,000 is really the only resumption at this point, unless we get a trough, a peak, a higher trough, and a higher peak. You guys know what it's all about. Lightning bolt action needs to be had. Let's move over to Tesla. So of course, Tesla hit the 560 support yesterday, bounced up and moved higher. Let's have a look at this on a 1 hour chart, just to really detail how we're looking at this market. So the way that I'm looking at it is that we have a clear level of consolidation. Here it is on the 4 hour, and I'd probably use a 4 hour or 2 hour confirmation here. So we have our supports, we have our resistances, and we have the level. If we break lower, what happens? I think we expose very low points. $500. That's right, I said that. $500 or $450 for Tesla will be had at that point. Now, if we break on a significant time frame, probably ideally 4 hour or daily or above this 592 zone, then what are we going to do? Hopefully return back to the devil number, the 666, where previous support was found. So this area here is incredibly important. Right now, the market's looking bearish, so we'll talk about that. But I think if Tesla closes under 560, I'd be pretty worried for buyers. And I think it just comes down to, we've had a sell-off here with a great recovery. We've had a sell-off, tried to recover. We've had a sell-off, tried to recover. And now, if it gets underneath this zone, I mean, I don't see any recovery until the next key psychological points, or of course, that weekly 450 that comes through down here. I mean, you can see the 450 and how many resistances were there. So of course, there's going to be a lot of buyers. We talked about that in yesterday's video. Let's move over to the US 100, as I'm sure many people are keen on this Nasdaq right now. Resistance, of course, the supports over here. Great technical, very solid. Right now, it looks like it's kind of double topping. Here's the double top. You've got it here, you've got it here, you've got the intervening. Of course, this is going to lead to what you would think is going to be some sellers in the markets, and those sellers are going to push it very cleanly down to around that 13,000 zone based on the double top. The thing that I've been talking about for a while though now has been these movements. This movement of the first move, the pullback, the second move, the pullback was the same length. We've checked that quite a few times. And then you get your third move. And that's kind of predicting a 12.7. Now, does this make sense to the market? I would argue it makes a lot of sense, and it also makes a lot of sense to our general sell in May theory. That is that we have supports across the board here. 12.7 is a zone that's clearly been met by a huge amount of buying pressure before, and it would also take us peak to trough here on the percentages of around 10%. So phenomenal levels being found if this stuff works out. And of course, right now, this market looks like the bears are back in control. If we move over to the QQQ, you'll notice 2050 on the daily. It's the exact same setup, except for the real market rather than the fake futures. and you'll notice the level of support was 321. I would expect the market at this stage to open underneath that, and of course, if you get a closure on any significant time frame, that's going to lead to further selling pressure back into these lows, which are around 315, 316, and then of course the 700 equals 310 on the QQQ, around that 310 level. So cool stuff. Definitely bears in control at this stage. And if you want to know where the bulls come back in, it's not until they close it back above this zone up here, this 326, 327 on the QQQ, or of course the 13,400. If we go over to the US 500, this is denting this one as well. We've got a little double top that actually started playing out yesterday. We had weakness throughout many sectors. This is now pushed under in futures trade underneath the 4120, the very important zone. And it's looking like, as we expected, this market, especially the S&P 500, is false breaking both ways. So I think we're going to have to use the Nasdaq to give us clearer direction, but it does look like the S&P 500 is quite weak. I think we will be doing battle with the 4120 tomorrow during the trade session, and you can see why, because the real market closed at 4127. So while the futures are at 4114, this is where the real market closed. This is of course where we expected buy pressure to come straight back into the market, and if they close underneath this zone, where do we go? Back down here, back down to the weekly 20 exponential moving average, which is around 39.60. That was our whole goal here for May, and it looks like it could be playing out very, very soon. Of course, with the sequences, you've got peak, you've got trough, you've got lower peak, and then you've got lower trough. And I think even 39.60 might not be able to hold up the market if we see this sequence of events on the real market. It's just becoming very bearish looking at this stage. I also saw a whole bunch of mass media saying it's the best time to buy ever, buy. And that always has me worried as well, because whenever the media tells us to do something, usually we want to kind of run the other way when possible. As always, guys, if you've enjoyed this video, please remember to subscribe, hit that like button. We'll be going live streaming tonight, 1.5 hours early before the New York Open, as per usual. And we'll see you there for what's going to be an incredibly exciting day throughout the cryptocurrencies, stock market indices, and of course, stocks themselves. Speak to you soon, and good luck. Bye for now.